Thank you so much, Ambassador Ginsburg. Ladies and gentlemen, senators, ambassadors, distinguished guests, Iran today stands at a historic crossroads. And when I was in Denmark, we actually had attempts at assassinations from the regime in Copenhagen. So it's a worldwide scourge, this regime. But for more than 4 decades, the international community has searched for a response to the crisis created by this ruling theocracy. 2 approaches have dominated: appeasement and war. We've tried both paths, appeasement and war, and now it's time to face reality. Engagement and concessions do not moderate the regime. They embolden it, enabling greater repression at home and aggression abroad. We have military confrontation. It may be forceful, but it can't produce legitimacy. It can't build democratic institutions or create a viable political alternative. It may weaken the regime, and it has, but it can't replace it with freedom. And this is no longer theoretical. Events on the ground have made one fact unmistakably clear. The Iranian crisis cannot be solved from outside. It must be resolved from within. This is not an abstract conclusion, it's a strategic fact. And make no mistake, the Iranian regime is much weaker now than it has ever been, but more repressive against its own people because it fears its own population more than any foreign bombs. More than 2 decades ago, the NCRI president-elect, Mrs. Maryam Rajavi, articulated what remains the only viable path forward, a third option. Neither appeasement nor war, but democratic change led by the Iranian people and their organized resistance. Thank you, Senator Booker, for those great comments. I will say that every president since the terrible takeover by the Mullah regime has said that they were going to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, and I'm proud that President Trump, with his Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has actually taken the fight to the Mullah regime and are in process, because bombing has weakened this regime. Bombing has weakened it to the weakest it has ever been since they took power in the 1979-1980 era. And President Trump may not have set out for regime change, but he is now negotiating with a new regime, certainly. The regime, though, it's surviving through repression that cannot reform itself, censorship, executions, these beautiful young men with their future ahead of them, and these powerful men that were leading resistance for so many decades. They may have silenced them, but they don't silence us. The only conclusion that can be clear is that only the Iranian people, organized, determined, and supported by a structured, battle-tested, organized force on the ground, can actually bring a new regime. And here lies the reality. It's too often overlooked. The organized alternative does exist. And at its core, it's leading, shaping, sustaining it. And these are the women, the Iranian women. For decades, the world has focused rightly on the oppression of women in Iran. But the other half of the story is even more powerful. Iranian women are not merely victims of repression, they are leaders of change. Leading, yes. They're leading the most organized force in the history of Iran. Over the past 4 decades, they've assumed leadership at the highest levels of the largest, most organized, most enduring opposition movement of Iran, namely the MEK. And this isn't symbolic. It's structural, it's deliberate, it's transformative. They've reached a profound understanding. Their liberation is inseparable from the liberation of their nation that's held hostage by the most misogynist tyrants in the history of the world. And now they choose resistance, and they've become freedom fighters like nothing the world has ever seen before. They've endured imprisonment, torture, and execution. They've sacrificed careers, families, and personal lives, and not for abstract ideals, but to end tyranny and build a free Iran. Under Mrs. Rajavi's leadership, this movement has redefined political struggle. It shattered long-standing taboos and proved through action that women are not only equal participants, but a driving force for change. And this stands in stark contrast to both forms of dictatorship that have shaped Iran's modern history. We're told by some to look nostalgically to the monarchy, but history tells a different story. The Shah's regime was a male-dominated dictatorship sustained by repression, censorship, and the brutality of the Savak. Today, his son seeks relevance, yet he has repeatedly and publicly expressed pride in that era. In fact, just this week, Reza Pahlavi openly defended his father's crimes. He was pressed by the Swedish TV SVT on his family's role in the repression, and he said, "I'm proud of my heritage, my family's history, and everything they have done." Let's be clear. You cannot build a democratic future relying on a dark past, which was once widely rejected by the vast majority of the Iranian people. The Iranian people have overthrown a corrupt, repressive, and one-party system of the Pahlavi dynasty, and they will not go backwards. The Iranian nation is sacrificing their own lives because they're striving for freedom, not putting an unrepentant son of a deposed dictator in a palace to rule them. Across the country, Iranians are demanding fundamental change. And within this reality, the organized resistance, rooted, structured, and resilient, it continues to grow. And this isn't abstract. It's a living, battle-tested movement that has survived the most unthinkable challenges, like none in the history of Iran. When Khomeini invited the MEK to join the government in 1979, they refused and never endorsed him, and they paid a high price for it, with thousands of its members slaughtered by the IRGC and repressive forces. And when the supreme leader issued a fatwa, or religious decree, to execute all MEK members and associates unless they repented, they stood firm, as many as 30,000 of them were murdered in 1988. And when they were asked to endorse Khomeini's machine of producing regional proxies, they refused and paid a high price again. And when they were asked to endorse the constitution of the regime that would legitimize the absolute clerical rule, they refused and became targets of killings in Iran. Mrs. Rajavi held her ground, and her movement went on the offensive against the regime. They introduced a 10-point plan for the future of Iran, exposed major nuclear sites of Iran, and formed a formidable army regime. The MEK fought in the courts for 15 years and got itself removed from the list. When Tehran threatened that they would raise hell in Iraq and wanted the MEK disarmed, the group turned over 2,139 tanks, armored personnel carriers, and field guns. And they patiently adjusted their strategy and formed resistance units within Iran. And they expanded it so that in February of this year, 5 days before the US and Israel war on Iran, they used 250 MEK members to launch an assault on the headquarters of the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. This movement is what the Iranian people need, and this movement is what the United States needs, and this movement is what the world needs. And Mrs. Rajavi does not seek foreign boots on the ground or imposed solutions. She calls for recognition and an end to the decades of misinformation and marginalization. The United States and the international community now have a historic opportunity. The time for ambiguity is over. The time for choosing sides is now. Recognize that change in Iran is already underway. Recognize that the viable alternative does exist. Recognize the National Council of Resistance of Iran and the provisional government of Mrs. Rajavi have put forward to guarantee that there's a transition from theocracy to a representative government. And such recognition aligns with the will of the Iranian people. So let's be clear. Iran's future will not be shaped by relics of the past. It will be determined by the Iranian people, by their courage, their sacrifice, and their organized resistance. It's a future based on democracy, equality, the rule of law, and the separation of religion and state. It's a future embodied in the vision of Mrs. Rajavi, and she has articulated this in her Jeffersonian 10-point platform for the future of Iran. A free, secular, democratic, non-nuclear republic at peace with its neighbors. So today, let's move beyond illusions, the illusion that the past offers a solution. The path forward is the Iranian people and their organized resistance. And it's time for the United States to stand clearly with them. Thank you.